Hello everyone and welcome to another Lorcana video. Today we're going to be checking out pretty much the first deck, the first real deck I've made in the new set, which is this Ruby Steel Heroes. The idea, as you can probably guess by the name, is to gain a lot of benefit from having the new Phil on board. As you can see him on the list there, he is the new 4-drop Phil, and among his 2 quest potential and his stats, he also has 2 key abilities. One, whenever you play a card that is a hero, you just gain a lore, and that's something I believe is very powerful in this game, which is sort of gaining lore that your opponent can't stop, right? They can't remove the card if you already have Phil on board. Obviously they can remove Phil, but I'm just talking about on the turn where either you play Phil and other stuff or already have Phil surviving, they can't stop you gaining this lore by playing these heroes. And also something that is quite helpful, heroes that are on board do get +1 challenger as well, so get that +1 strength when challenging enemies, and that can be pretty clutch and make some pretty positive trades when you consider some of these slightly lower strength cards can actually start hitting some of those key sort of target damage points for your opponent's cards. But let's take a look at the list overall. We of course have the Robin Hood package. I think playing Steel without the Robin Hoods, you know, obviously the small and the large one, is probably a criminal offense somewhere because it is so strong. So that's a bit of a no-brainer. Of course, these are heroes as well, something you can keep in mind. We do have 2 Tianas as well as 2 1/3s to just help out with the hero slots and also just get something a little bit more consistent on the board in the early game. Next up, we have a card that I like a lot, and he doesn't always do tons of work, but when he does, you genuinely do feel it. Flynn Rider, the red version, to cost 2/2. This guy doesn't, in some matchups, he has very little impact other than being the only 2-drop in the deck, but in mainly the Sapphire matchups, if you just play Flynn on 2, he normally procs himself because, again, like Sapphire decks don't often have a lot of early characters on board, obviously mainly the Sapphire Ruby ones. So even if Flynn gets to proc once and get you 3 lore, he's already done his job. And if that happens more than once, or you play a second Flynn or follow it up and maybe defend it, he can get a lot of work done. And again, he is a hero, so if you have Flynn on board and you decide, okay, I'm not going to be able to gain his effect going forward, if you have Phil, he can hit for 3, which is really powerful. Next up, you'll see this deck list probably looks a little bit wonky, and it's because it's not fully, it's definitely not fully fleshed out, but I've played a lot of games with it. But Ariel's in here as a card that doesn't really get a lot of singing benefit, but is a decently statted card with a couple of singing options to help with the evasive. But really, this was just a reaction from an absolutely obscene amount of emerald sort of evasive decks, whether that, I mean, they're mainly sort of emerald, like going full Floodborn with like emerald steel and stuff like that, but it's just to help out with some of these evasive and a lack of ways to kill evasives outside of some of the removal tools that we have a little bit later on. So again, I'm messing around with the numbers of each of these cards. Maybe there's less princes in there and more Ariels or something else, we will see. But I think just having Ariel, it's another inkable 3 cost, and it is evasive and pretty well statted to deal with the likes of Diablo mainly, but also, you know, the Pegasus and so on. Next up, we have probably one of the highlight cards from Ruby this set, which is Sisu, I guess in both forms in Ruby. We have the 3-drop again, a good inkable card, but most importantly, I guess it's twofold this card. Strong 3-drop, 4 health, so very sturdy, very sticky on board, and also it quests for 2 to be quite aggressive in terms if you're trying to race, and it can trade well because its attack, again, unless you're against a hand dump, and it's probably going to be Emerald Discard, it attacks it's pretty hard. That strength is normally at least 3 a lot of the time, and a 3/4 for 3, that quest for 2 is pretty powerful. And then on top of that, we will get to this later, but it is of course a shift target for the 8 cost Sisu, which we'll get to a little bit later on. We then have the Prince. Again, maybe we don't need 4 here, but I just wanted solid inkable cards. Another hero, of course, 3 cost, and can help defend the likes of Sisu, can help defend Flynn, and a few other good choices. And also against some of the decks that are playing some of the smaller strength characters, he's just really tanky, and he can quest for 2, and he's a hero. So if, again, you have Phil down, he actually has 2 attack on challenge, which is really powerful. Next up, we have a card I really, really like, actually, which is Super Goof. 4-cost Inkable, 2-4 with Rush, and he can actually, he gains lore when he actually makes that challenge, which is really, really powerful. He's a hero. Guess what? You noticed in the theme. He's a hero. And also, again, if you play him with Phil on board, he actually challenges for 3. So he's a 4-cost 3-4 that can go on the turn you play him and gain lore. Very, very strong indeed. Now we have a maybe surprise factor for me. I didn't expect to be ended up playing Prince Eric, but I put him in the list. I put 4 of them, which is surprising because I'm not normally a huge fan of uninkable cards. But he's really strong. And again, theme, hero. He is quest for a lot for that 2 lore as well. But the biggest thing really is to give us some way to fight back against some of the characters our opponents will play that they probably won't quest with, or that you want to get rid of them quickly, or you want to set up that kind of trap. So the likes of, you look at getting rid of a beast, or any big singers that are going to be annoying, any big evasive characters that are going to be annoying, or just any big health characters in general. For example, like Tomatoa is a pain to actually deal with, so Eric does a great job. And as I mentioned, yes, he's a hero, so he gains the benefits. Now, of course, I did mention Phil a little bit earlier, so we'll jump across to Maui. Maui's Maui. If you've played Lorcana ever, you'll know the strength of Maui, and he is a hero, so really powerful. Beast, following up in there. Again, we all know the overall strengths of Beast, but once more, he's a hero, so he gains that small extra benefit. He's a good, like, fill into Beast, or fill into Maui, or even fill into Robin. Any of those 5s to follow up Phil, very strong, because they normally have just a huge impact on that game, and it helps us out with the card draw as well, which is very important. Robin, I sort of touched on, like, if you play Steel, you probably play Robin. Then we get 2 Medusas in there, and again, this goes off the back of basically why Eric's in there as well. Medusa isn't a hero, uninkable, cost 6, but being able to just nope a lot of your opponent's cards, or some of your key opponent's cards, is very, very powerful. So I think putting 2 in there has been okay for me so far. Maybe the deck needs more, but again, you'll see where this gets a little bit tricky as we move on. So there's 2 Medusas, but then I felt the need to play Tinks, just because, along with Grab Your Swords, I think having AoE, at least what I've been playing against, which is a ton of Emerald, having AoE is very, very strong, and then options, of course, to follow up with more of that sort of deal 2 damage that Tink can do on a trade, which is very powerful. So we got 2 Tinks, a Cinderella at the top, and I will say, the amount of times I've played this Cinderella versus Inked is low. Yeah, she often gets Inked, but she's mainly there for those slower matchups as just another bomb you can play, and she is pretty dangerous when you do get to play her. And then finally, for the characters, we have the large Sisu. Again, I was originally running 4, but 4 uninkable 8 cost in this deck was very spicy indeed, even though you can shift them. So I did drop it down to 2, and they are there to just sort of blow certain opponents out of the water, right? If you do get to shift the Sisu on 6, then in a lot of matchups, you basically clear their board, which is very, very powerful. And finally, we can check out the removal. This deck had less removal in it, but the more and more I played, the more I sort of understood that this deck can actually play slow if it wants to and become the control deck, because we have the likes of, you know, we've got the Maui and the Robin and the Medusas, Tinks in there, which are quite controlly cards, even the Erics as well. And then we can run the 3 Babooms to be, I'll be honest, basically kill Diablos, because that's all I've really been doing with it, or evasives that aren't Diablo. Smash, same thing, 3 of those as well, just to kill out those key targets or any aerials and things like that. 2, along came Zeus, just to deal with some of the higher health targets like your, you know, beasts or Pegasus or anything a bit awkward to deal with. And then we have Grab Your Swords again, because if we do get to Grab Your Swords on 5 against Emerald, you might not win, but it feels like it a lot of the time. You do jump ahead quite a lot. So yes, that is the list overall. I did, or I was running Storm Rage on, but the problem was I tried to purposely avoid my early removal being songs, because if I'm ready for, oh, I can sing this on 3 to kill the Diablo, and they've Ursula'd, then that's a problem, right? So for me, even though Storm Rageon's great and I would love to play it because it draws cards, but Smash and Baboom, can't be Ursula'd away, right? Which is a very, very, very big deal, because if they Ursula that away, and then you just don't have a removal tool, Diablo goes on the board, GG, a lot of the time. So yeah, that is the list. Not a super long video today, but I have been playing a lot of this, and my scores are really, really good, even against all the Emerald I've been facing, which can be a little bit tricky. But yeah, that's the list. That's the shell, at least, sort of version 1.0 of Ruby Steel Heroes. Let me know what you think. I'm sure a lot of people have been playing with this fill and trying to make cool things work. Let me know what you would change. Are there cards that I've completely not thought about? Are there, some swaps? Should I run 4 of this or 2 of those, and so on? You let me know, because I definitely want to test more of this. So yeah, that's just the list for today. I hope you enjoy it if you do get to try it out yourself. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you guys next time.